our next speaker found that on her second day in the office, this is how she had to dress. So I'd like to welcome now our CEO and Chief Lobster, Leslie Baccio. Leslie, do you want to take it away?
Thank you, Tracy. Thanks for starting with that humiliating photograph. Yes, that was my second day at work. Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you here today. We miss being in person, but thank you for joining us on Zoom. This has been a truly incredible year. You know, I have to say I've spent my whole career working on food security, and I have never seen a year like this one. You know, what this pandemic really revealed was just how many people in our community were already living paycheck to paycheck without a lot of savings. And as soon as shelter in place went into effect and people started losing their jobs, we pretty immediately saw a 100% increase in need. What has been really heartwarming to me about this pandemic is how our community has responded. We are so grateful to be part of this network of over 300 incredible partners who really jumped in right away to help us in this work. We're also really grateful to our cities and our counties and our elected officials and school districts who also have been so supportive and really critical to this response effort. And also to the tens of thousands of volunteers that have continued to show up and help us out, and our financial donors who have really made it possible for us to have such a tremendous response. It has truly taken everyone in the community coming together to make this happen. I'm also, of course, really grateful to our amazing staff who have been absolutely busting it since the start of the pandemic. It's hard to believe that we're going on a full year of this, and I'm just really grateful and just so proud of how our team has responded. What's been remarkable about this pandemic is not only serving twice as many people and providing twice as much food almost immediately, but also the fact that we have had to do our work so differently. You know, many of you know that pre-pandemic, our model was mostly distributing groceries through these just-in-time, farmers markets where people could walk up and select what they wanted. And we knew right away that wasn't going to be able to keep people safe in this pandemic. And we started changing to this model of pre-boxing our groceries and standing up so many of these drive-throughs. So you'll see on this slide here that we have gone from 3 drive-throughs pre-COVID to now over 130 drive-throughs across both our counties. We are, again, providing twice as much food. We're serving 500,000 people every month, which is twice as many people as we were serving pre-pandemic. And another thing that we saw pretty quickly, and right away when the pandemic hit, our Food Connection hotline that usually gets 180 calls a day started getting 1,000 calls a day. At the peak, they were getting 1,200 calls a day. And the majority of those folks were people who had never asked for assistance before, and also a lot of our seniors who didn't have anybody who could go and pick up groceries for them. So we started doing home delivery. Again, we're grateful to so many of our partners and our volunteers for helping make this possible, but we're now providing home delivered groceries to over 5,000 households every single month. You can go on to the next slide. We have, of course, really had to scale dramatically to be able to provide this level of service. And we are now, if you could picture it, every single week we receive more than 90 tractor trailer loads of food across what is now 6 different facilities. And we've also had to expand our fleet of trucks. Pre-pandemic, we had about 20 tractor trailers, and now we have over 35 tractor trailers, again, delivering all this food back out into the community. If you go to the next slide. Something that's been exciting is that even in spite of all the chaos of the pandemic, we've been able to launch Salesforce and begin to enroll our clients into Salesforce, which has allowed us to have more real-time data. And also because we're collecting folks' cell phone numbers, we are now able to communicate much more easily with our clients. And this has allowed us not only to let people know when there are changes to a distribution, but also to get quick feedback on how we're doing, and also to get a better understanding of who we're serving. So right at the start of the pandemic, one thing we saw was that more than 50% of our clients were new to food assistance. And then just last month, we did a survey to our clients, and we saw that half of people responded that they had to delay paying their rent or their mortgage. 50% of people reported that they had less than $100 in savings. 70% reported that someone in their household had lost their job or had their hours reduced. And over 70% of people said that they were currently employed as essential workers. And I think all of this data speaks to what we know, which is how disproportionately this pandemic is impacting low income, low wage workers. If you go to the next slide, Tracy, and just how long it will take our community to recover from this crisis. You know, once people face such an extreme economic setback, and we saw this after 2008 as well, it will take a long time for people to recover. And so we are planning to be able to continue this level of service for the foreseeable future. And in fact, we're trying to get ourselves in a better position, not only to sustain this amount of service, but to be able to respond if there are spikes in need in the future. One of our big roadblocks is really our facilities. Like I mentioned before, you know, pre-pandemic, we had a facility in San Mateo and 2 large facilities in San Jose. We've had to add a third, even larger lease facility in San Jose. We're also having to use outside storage that we're renting, and being spread across this many facilities is very inefficient for how we do this work and really not sustainable. So we are going to be looking in both counties to be making improvements to our facilities, really looking for larger spaces to be able to do this work. And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Tracy.
Thank you so much, Leslie, for kind of giving that review of what we've all been dealing with in the last year. I apologize for all the ongoing dings in this new world we live in. We are both presenting and tech support and running the event. So if this is the worst technical difficulties we have, I'm going to be super grateful. I wanted to briefly review our policy principles. This year, we really decided to focus on 3 key principles. The first one is one that has been part of our policy agenda right from the beginning, that access to healthy food is a human right and it's foundational to economic health and stability. And we have that as the underpinning of many of the policies that we support. And something that we have supported very much as a policy, we elevated to a principle this year. We really believe that all children should receive free school meals. It contributes to health, nutrition, equity, and community. And I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that in a moment. Our third principle is a new one for us this year. We think that all policies, both existing and new and proposed policies, should be examined for their impact on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We recognize the ill effects of systemic racism, and we want to ensure that we're using an equity lens and some systems thinking as we look at policies as to how we might move forward as a country. In terms of universal school meals, we feel like the argument for them is fairly simple. They create equity. They ensure that every child is ready to learn and thrive, and we provide all of the children in our country with a free education, and we should make sure they have the nutrition they need in order to be able to take advantage of that. And, you know, lastly, but I think not at all unimportantly, we want to ensure that school is a place where communities are created, not divided. For too long, we've been dividing kids into the free kids, the reduced kids, and the paid kids. And we really just want to have everyone be eating together in community and ready for their day of learning. We are lucky to have here today 2 really big champions for universal school meals who have partnered with us, Supervisor Susan Ellenberg and Assemblymember Marc Berman. And I'd like to invite Supervisor Ellenberg to say a few words because she was the first person to step forward and help us get some universal meals programs started in our own county. So Supervisor Ellenberg, if you'll unmute yourself and share some words, we'd appreciate that.
Oops.
Yo, we got you. You're good.
All right. Thank you. And thank you, Leslie and Tracy, for the unbelievable work that you have been doing, and the way Second Harvest has stepped up has really been nothing short of tremendous. Just about a year ago, I submitted a referral along with my colleague Supervisor Summidian that was unanimously approved by our Board of Supervisors to develop and fund a pilot program to help school districts shift to universal meal programs for their students. The proposal, as Tracy mentioned, was the first of its kind, initiated by a local government in California, but it was modeled after successful programs in other states to boost school participation in federal universal meal reimbursement programs. And the goal is to use a targeted local investment to leverage federal school meal funds so that every child can access breakfast and lunch at school. Universal meal programs are critical to reaching children from undocumented or mixed status families, as well as those families whose incomes hover just above the threshold to qualify for support, but are still struggling with the high cost of living in the Bay Area. Of course, I didn't expect that just a month after introducing the proposal that schools would close due to COVID-19, and that we would be faced with a whole new set of challenges in meeting the needs of kids and families. COVID has made apparent that schools are absolutely critical resources for families well beyond their academic mission and are essential in addressing food insecurity. Meeting the needs of kids and families is at the core of everything I do as a county supervisor, and making sure that kids have enough to eat is foundational to their health, their development, and their ability to learn and thrive. If we want to improve outcomes for kids, we cannot let them go hungry. So as we continue to adapt to what the next school year might bring, I am very grateful for the county's continued partnership with Second Harvest, the Santa Clara County Office of Education, and our local school districts to develop local strategies to end child hunger. And I am very encouraged by our state's legislative efforts to expand this work. California leads in so many ways. It is high time that we end childhood hunger here in our state.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Ellenberg. We have really appreciated your leadership on this. And I also wanted to give an opportunity for Assemblyman Berman to speak with us. He's been our champion at the state level. But I'd like to add one other thing about him, that as the pandemic was increasing the need so incredibly quickly, and as we were all having to stay home and not go to the hairdresser, Assemblyman Berman had a great idea that I gave us all both a lot of entertainment and a lot of support, which is that he shaved his head, he had his wife shave his head live on Facebook in order to support the food bank. So we appreciated both the support and the entertainment. And Assemblyman Berman, you can speak about that if you wish, or also about how you're seeing universal school meals evolve at the state level.
Well, thank you so much, Tracy. And that was a lot of fun, the event that we did. First off, I want to thank you, Leslie, and everyone at Second Harvest for the crucial work that you've been doing to keep families fed throughout this crisis. I'm a huge fan of the team at Second Harvest, and that was before I learned this morning that y'all celebrate my birthday, Halloween, every year. So maybe I'll have to come celebrate with you and your team one year. But yeah, you know, as the pandemic was just starting and I realized I wasn't going to make it to the barber, I decided to do a fundraiser for a local nonprofit by shaving my head live on Facebook Live. And as I was researching different nonprofits in my district, in the 24th Assembly District, I was surprised, frankly, to learn how many nonprofits in Silicon Valley rely on Second Harvest and rely on your support to provide food to their members. And so that made it only logical to choose Second Harvest as the beneficiary of our little hair shaving stunt. And we raised over $16,000 for Second Harvest from over 100 donors, including some people I didn't even know, but who heard about it and really wanted to support Second Harvest at such an important time. I also want to let everyone know about major legislation and budget action on school meals that we're working on at the state level. And it's very similar to the work that Supervisor Ellenberg is leading on at the county level. Some of you may know that last year I authored AB 3006, which was a bill idea that came to me from Second Harvest. And that bill would have backfilled what's called the community eligibility provision schools, making it financially feasible for all high poverty schools in California to serve universal free breakfast and lunch. Unfortunately, AB 3006 died last spring when all new spending was put on hold due to COVID-19. But as 2020 went on, the state found itself in a really unexpected position where state revenues have been much higher than expected, largely because high income earners have been able to work remotely throughout the pandemic, while the stock market has also soared. Yet, as Second Harvest has seen firsthand over the last year, while some Californians have been able to thrive during the pandemic, millions of lower income Californians who were already struggling to get by before the pandemic have lost their jobs or have had their hours significantly reduced and are now teetering on the edge of homelessness. Food insecurity is more severe than it's ever been. So this year, I'm teaming up with Senator Nancy Skinner, who's the Senate Budget Committee chair, on a more sweeping universal school meals proposal. SB 364, the End Child Hunger Act of 2021, proposes to make meals at all schools in California free and universal for a lot of the reasons that Tracy touched upon a few minutes ago. The bill also intends to establish the Better Out of School Time Boost nutrition program to prevent child hunger during school breaks and campus closures. I think everyone at this meeting understands the myriad benefits of universal meals, and Tracy touched upon a lot of these. It covers undocumented youth. It eliminates the stigma of free and reduced price meals. It eliminates lunch debt. It's easier for schools to administer, and it ensures that no child falls through the cracks. We know that right here in Silicon Valley, there are thousands of students who attend schools in wealthy communities, but who don't have the same resources as their more well-off peers, and who come to school hungry and are embarrassed. You might be embarrassed by utilizing free school meals programs if they're the only ones. SB 364 is a very ambitious proposal, but as we all just heard, hunger has skyrocketed during the pandemic. And we want to take advantage of the state's surplus to address this enormous need and close the gap that we could see once the federal seamless summer waiver expires. The details of SB 364 are going to be worked out in the coming months throughout the legislative and budget process, but we're starting big, and we have the chair of the Senate Budget Committee, Senator Skinner, leading the effort, which is a huge advantage. We would love to have the community support this proposal. Please don't hesitate to reach out to my office if you have any questions, or if you or your organization want to support the effort. And again, thank you so much to Second Harvest, not only for working with my office on legislation for years, but for being the lifeline to our constituents who are struggling to get through this pandemic every day.
Thank you so much, Assemblyman Berman. And I want to thank both of you, and also you both have staff that have become so educated about these proposals and how to really make them work and how to draw down those federal dollars while feeding kids. So we're so grateful to be able to work with you and your offices. I wanted to review a little bit where we are at the county level, because we have been lucky enough to get funding for both Santa Clara and San Mateo counties to get started on filling those gaps for universal meal programs. As Assemblyman Berman referred to, all of the meals have been grab and go this year. They've essentially been universal. But starting this fall, if everyone goes back to school, we already have 63 schools in 13 school districts affecting more than 19,000 children who will be on universal meals as a result of this gap funding. So we're very excited about that, and we expect that the number of schools that will qualify for that will actually expand. One of the other kind of nitty-gritty administrative efforts that's really paid off has been our local data match. We started this in Santa Clara County. It will hopefully be moving to San Mateo County this year, but we worked very closely with Santa Clara County Social Services, the Office of Ed, And we got some work done to make sure that kids who were on public benefits of some kind and therefore would qualify for school meals were captured. The state match was missing a lot of these kids. And so bringing it down to the local level allowed us to capture more kids, get them more meals, and also provide the opportunity that more of those schools will qualify for those federal universal meals programs. And so far, since 2019, we've identified almost 15,000 children who are getting school meals that would not otherwise have gotten that. And we're so grateful for the partnership with social services and with Office of Ed to make that happen. I think you've just gotten the best update possible on our state efforts. And we are really grateful that the efforts that Assemblymember Berman made last year really highlighted, I think, the issue. And we were proud to be a co-sponsor of that bill. And we're very excited about this even bigger bill, and we're going to be 1,000% behind that this year. The other real possibility we have this year is that we may be able to tackle this at the federal level as well. School meals are authorized under what's called the Child Nutrition Reauthorization. I guess originally there was an authorization, now everyone talks about the reauthorization. It is years late in being reauthorized, and we've been totally fine with that because if it isn't reauthorized, it stays just the way it is. And under the previous administration, we did not expect that anything very positive would happen around school meals. But there is now a nationwide effort now that people have seen what happens when you have essentially universal school meals during a pandemic. I think that child nutrition reauthorization may happen this year, and I think there'll be a very large push from a lot of quarters, and especially from us here in California, to ensure that universal school meals are a part of that plan. At a bare, we'd love to see every kid fed every day, but at a bare minimum, we'd like to see more schools able to qualify and higher reimbursement for those schools so they can afford to move to those programs. So we're feeling very positive about what could happen in this realm. I think that we have a minute or two for questions. Yeah, are there any questions in the chat before we move to summer meals?
No, there are not.
Okay, did anyone have anything they wanted to ask or say? You can actually unmute yourself. This is not a webinar. We're actually trusting you to speak up if you wish to. All right, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Zia to talk a little bit about summer meals and pandemic EBT.
Good morning, everyone. As we know, hunger does not take a holiday during the summer, and kids who need access to school meals during the school year also need access to meals over the summer. Summer meals, it's a federally funded state administrated program that provides free meals to kids 18 and under all summer long. This program is administered by sponsors on the ground, like YMCA, for example, and school districts, who reimburse per meal from the California Department of Education. Next slide. So at Second Harvest, the advocacy and marketing team, every year we do a big promotion around summer meals. We really want to get the word out to families and caregivers. And this summer, past summer, we administered a local texting number, 876-876. You can see the illustration above, for families to enter food, comida, or in Vietnamese for food, and their zip codes, and they will receive a meals list back of sites near them. This was our first year doing it locally, and we were really excited with the response. But we also administered a traditional marketing campaign with flyers, door hangers, banners, bookmarks, and we went a little digital given the pandemic situation, and tried out some Facebook advertising in Spanish, English, and Vietnamese, and also some TV advertising. Next slide, please. So what actually happened over the summer? It seems like so long ago right now. Well, we advocated, along with many partners, including advocates on this call, for federal flexibilities to make summer meal service as seamless as possible. And thus emerged grab-and-go meals. So grab-and-go meals, Basically, it operates where a family will pull up to a school site or a community site, pop open their trunk. Meals will be loaded in the back of their trunk, sometimes multiple meals at once or multiple days of meals. And June, a food service director, is going to be joining our call later to talk about her experience with this. And then the family will drive off. So the flexibilities that are in place allow for the non-congregate meal setting, some flexibilities around meal times, around meal service. And really these flexibilities have been so valuable to our community during this pandemic. And we've advocated for the extension of these flexibilities. Right now, they are through June 30th, 2021. But as I mentioned, we're going to continue to push that these are extended. So our school districts and community sites really stepped up. We had over 250 sites across both our counties, and we worked to keep track of these sites to increase access for our families and awareness that this was a resource that was available. So here's an example of what it looked like. It first started as a summer meal site, then turned into a distance learning site, and we will once again make this a summer meal site for summer 2021. Next slide. Okay, so what were the results? Take a look at this graph. This is incredible. I'll note that our 2020 numbers are still estimates. We haven't received the final numbers yet, but you can see we reached almost 4 million meals served across both counties. This is incredible. I think this really demonstrates how valuable our school food service and community meal sites are, particularly in this pandemic. So there were more meals served than a usual summer due to the federal flexibilities I mentioned, so the multiple meals served per day. And also just really a tremendous output of support from our partners. We really worked hard to get this information out, and I think this shows how successful as a community we have been in reaching our families. Of course, there is much more work to be done. I wanted to note that although participation was incredible over the summer, schools experienced extreme financial loss. Not every school, but I would say generally in our communities, the loss of participation of in-school time months was massive for our school districts. I wanted to note that as well. Next slide. Pandemic EBT. Okay, so Pandemic EBT was another resource that was offered to families. It was created through the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, and it's for children who are eligible for free and reduced price meals. It's a debit card. You can see an illustration at the top right corner. And this is a resource to replace lost meals during the pandemic. So originally when schools were closed, this has now been extended to partial school hours and children in childcare enrolled in Calfresh. So there's been one phase so far, and Pbt 1.0, and then an extension. And this has been so incredible for our families. Just statewide, this benefit was issued to 3.7 million children. That's $1.3 billion in benefits that went to California. Locally, you can see that 127,000 students in Santa Clara and San Mateo County access this resource. Originally, it was up to $365 per child. That has since been increased with Pbt 2.0, which is not an implementation stage as of yet, but will be a resource offered for the 2021 school year. So with Pbt 1.0, we had a tremendous reach rate, 86% to 90% of children eligible access this resource. And we really want to leverage the success of Pandemic EBT into a summer EBT program when pandemic EBT expires. We think that the success of that pilot can really be leveraged to continue to offer an additional resource in the summer for our families. So Pbt, summer EBT, they are complements to traditional meal service in the summer. You can see the picture above is actually at Santa Clara Unified School District. That's what summer meal service used to look like. And we don't know if we're gonna get there this summer, probably not. But one day we hope to offer these summer meals in person and have this summer EBT available as well. expanded eligibility, we are advocating that flexibilities be extended around meal service site requirements. Right now, it's linked to school census data and local school free and reduced price meal eligibility. So a school has to have 50% or more free and reduced price eligible students for a site to pop up. And in our communities, that is shrinking. We are losing sites and our families are losing access to these meals. So we are advocating that this be changed in the future. So usually at this moment in the webinar, we ask for your assistance in helping us create more summer meal sites. Right now, summer 2021 is still up in the air and may look more like this grab and go model. And so we do appreciate your support as always, connecting us to opportunities for meals. And I just wanted to end with a huge thank you for your support.
Thanks, Zia. Really appreciate it. And we're going to transition now to a more general nutritional support that's incredibly important to our communities, and that is SNAP, federally, the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, but California likes to rebrand everything, so it's called Calfresh here. And this is benefits that are provided on an EBT card to families that they can spend at any grocery store. You know, people don't necessarily realize that as massively as we are serving the community nationwide, if you look at it, for every meal that a food bank provides, there are 9 meals provided by SNAP. So this is such an important policy for families nationwide. It needs improvements, though. During the pandemic, the Congress has been great about increasing benefits and reducing the difficulty of getting access to Calfresh, and we need that to continue. Right now, there's a 15% increase that is going to go through the end of June. If this latest bill passes, it'll go through the end of September. But the truth is, that's needed permanently. The other thing that we've been advocating for years is that benefits are currently paid on what's called the Thrifty Food Plan. And really, this is a food plan that if you saw it, you would say, there's no way you're going to feed a family, especially in Silicon Valley, on that food budget. So we're asking the Congress to change it to the low-cost food plan, which is still very thrifty, but would provide enough additional support that it would be a little bit more realistic in terms of serving our families. At the state level, there are a bunch of things that we're looking at with regard to this type of assistance. One is really a bill of principle, SB 108, which essentially says every human being has the right to access healthy food. We couldn't not support that one, given that it's one of our principles. And essentially, this bill is really asking the government to look at ways that they can be maximizing the benefits that are available to as much of the community as is possible. There are a couple of different bills too that are looking at how to potentially include immigrants in food benefits. One is more on an emergency basis, and one is more about trying to create a more permanent program. Calfresh is only available to a small sliver of immigrants who meet certain criteria. So there's still a very large population, especially in our communities, that may be left out of these overall benefits. And then lastly, a bill that frankly should have passed years ago, and Senator Scott Wiener has been working on this for years, but we think this is the year that it happens. It's SB 107, and what it will do is create a simplified application for older people and disabled folks. It's $1 million one-time investment that will get California access to a lot more federal Calfresh benefits. And we're lucky to have one of the Senate fellows for Scott Wiener, Nuna Garipian, here to just briefly say a little bit about this bill. Nuna, can you unmute yourself and speak with us a little bit about this bill?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me here today, Tracy. First off, on behalf of Senator Wiener, thank you so much for all of the important work that you all do. And thank you to all of the former speakers that spoke about all the work that they're doing in their individual offices as well. SB 107 expands Calfresh to ensure everyone, especially seniors, have efficient and equitable access to Calfresh. by shortening this long, burdensome application that's existed in the past, and allowing all parts of the application, including the signature, to be conducted by phone. Formerly, before the pandemic, applicants actually could not sign by phone, which prevented a huge population of seniors and people with disabilities from accessing Calfresh in the first place. And the COVID-19 pandemic truly showed us how fragile food insecurity can be, and how these obstacles, such as an application, can prevent people from accessing necessary food benefits. And this is especially important for older adults and people with disabilities who may lack reliable internet services for doing the application online and face harder burdens when trying to access Calfresh in general. And like you had said, this has been long necessary. We attempted this legislation last year. It was SB 882, and we're really glad that this year it's back and even stronger than it was last year. And we're really hoping to get it passed finally once and for all. And yes, thank you again so much for having me here. And Senator Wiener also sends his best and wishes he could be here as well.
Thank you so much, Nina. We really appreciate it. And we're rooting for you. This is the year. And, you know, Calfresh is such an important support. And one of the things we wanted to do is Ed Aldayo is one of our regional program coordinators. And so he really gets to see the view on the ground, and has some personal experience as well that he's decided that he would love to share with you, just to get a sense of how this program plays out in people's lives. So Ed, do you mind unmuting yourself and sharing a little bit about your experience?
Good morning. I first want to thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to be able to share my story. My name is Edgar Aldale, but I do go by Ed. I'm a program coordinator at Second Harvest. I have been with the company since May 2020, so a little over 9 months now. But before Second Harvest, I was a student at San Jose State University, focusing on completing my degree, a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology. I had originally transferred from Allen Hancock College, a community college located in Santa Maria, California. Moving to San Jose was a big change and an eye-opener for me. I quickly found out that everything was at a much faster pace than what I was used to. Also, that the cost of living in San Jose is a lot more expensive than I thought. I didn't really take into account how expensive it would actually be to live in San Jose. I found myself living in an apartment, sharing a small room with another student, and still having to pay higher than expected rent, plus other expenses. As the next 2 years passed by, going into my senior year at SJSU, my last semester, I quickly found myself struggling to maintain a healthy eating diet. I was worrying more about how am I going to pay for my education, my rent, and other bills. I began to drink more coffee in order to suppress my hunger. This would get me through the day, but it also started to affect my studies because I wasn't able to fully focus and retain most of the information from my classes. But luckily, all this changed once SJSU partnered up with Second Harvest. With this partnership, the pantry at SJSU had finally opened up. I can still remember my roommate Alejandro telling me like, hey, look inside the fridge. I noticed that we had fresh groceries. I quickly looked at him and asked him, how much do I owe you? Normally, we would have split the cost of groceries between us two. That's when Alejandro told me like nothing. It was all from the school. The food pantry had finally opened up. This was a game changer because it wasn't so much as what are we going to eat, but now it was a choice of what should we make. This was a big help and relief. The partnership between San Jose State and Second Harvest made my last semester at San Jose State less stressful because I wasn't worrying so much about what's going to be my next meal. I am very grateful for Second Harvest and the impact they had both on me and the students at San Jose State. This positive impact on the community is one of the main reasons why I love working at Second Harvest. Our mission is to help those in need of food, being able to give back to the community, and help others not worry about where they're going to get their next meal from.
Thank you so much, Ed. Really appreciate you sharing that. And, you know, one of the things that's important about that story is not only illustrating, you know, some of our partnerships with colleges where we know there is a lot of hunger, but also the fact that college students are one of the populations that have had a really tough time accessing Calfresh because the rules are so complicated. And once again, right now, because of the pandemic, a lot of those rules have been simplified, and there are a lot more college students who are going to be eligible. And once again, we hope that those types of flexibilities are going to be maintained for the long term, because this pandemic is going to, the economic crisis caused by the pandemic is going to be going on for a long time. And we want to make sure that we use this vital way to support our community. So thanks again, Ed. I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about support of food banks and food rescue. So food banks do get a lot of support from the federal and the state, although most people don't realize that the majority of our funding does come from individuals. I think it's, I don't know the exact number at the moment, but it's upwards of 78% that actually comes from individuals. But the food we receive from the federal government and the state government is also tremendously important. And the main conduit for that is the Emergency Food Assistance Program, or what we affectionately call TFAP. And this food flows through food banks across the country and then out to all of our partners, because as Leslie was explaining, we work with over 300 partners across both counties, and most anyone who's giving out groceries is probably getting the majority of their food from us for free. So this is part of where that food comes from. We received a tremendous amount of support from the federal government last year in terms of food, and it looked like we were going to be facing something of a federal food cliff. But in the December relief bill, there was some funding for TFAP, and there should be quite a bit more in this upcoming relief bill if that passes. So we're really grateful for that, because we were not sure how we were going to make up that gap. The other kind of federal support that we received in this last year that you might have heard of was the Coronavirus Farmers Assistance Program, also known as Farmers to Families. This was fresh boxed food that came directly to nonprofits. And because we have an amazing sourcing team, they were actually able to get very good access to a lot of this food and get it out to our community. And so it was a tremendous source of support. It was also a tremendous mess. This was a program that was created incredibly quickly. The terms of it changed all the time. The channels changed all the time. The food changed all the time. So we think that this program may continue in some form because it has benefited both farmers and distributors. If it does continue, we would love to see the TFAP channel used as the way this food gets out, so that it doesn't create chaos and the food gets to where it's most needed. And we'd love to see much larger timelines. There were times when we would find out, in fact, we have just found out that boxes we were expecting to get on Monday and Tuesday, they're not coming. So we have to gather the food, build boxes to fill in that gap. And that sort of thing has been happening all throughout this program. We really need the certainty of 3 to 6 months of planning as to what we're going to get and when. We also need some ability to affect what food is in those boxes. There's certain food that's much more attractive to our clients than others. And these boxes we've had zero choice on. So it's been hard for us to customize for the foods that our communities might want. At the state level, the state of California was also tremendously helpful last year. And typically we get $8 million in Cal Food, which is in the budget for this year. Those are California grown foods that go to food banks through this program. And for the governor's budget this year, he'd already put in $30 million in emergency funding. Fortunately, we were able to get that in immediate action, which means that we'll get that food before the fiscal year starts, in that money before the fiscal year starts in July, which is tremendously helpful. But we don't expect need to go down from last year's number. And so we're actually asking for an additional $110 million in emergency food in the FY22 budget. So we're hoping that that gets covered. The other thing that's really important is, as the wildfires and the floods and the pandemics have shown, there is a real need for disaster and climate resilience. And so we're asking for a $32 million investment in food banks throughout California in order to increase solar panels and storage capacity and all of those things that will harden our system a little bit more for those shocks that we have to realize are going to keep coming. The last thing we have on our state agenda is the renewal of the Farm to Food Bank tax credit. That is supposed to expire this fall. We'd like to see it renewed for at least another 5 years. This simply encourages farms to donate food rather than throwing it out because they get a tax credit. So that has been tremendously important to us. Food rescue is something that people don't always realize how much we do of already. And there is a bill that was passed several years ago, SB 1383, which no one ever named, and we all still call it SB 1383. Isn't that catchy? This is going to be implemented statewide starting next year, and it's a really important bill that further encourages food generators to donate quality food that is going to go unused otherwise. And we're excited about it because it'll give us more variety of food to get to our clients. It'll be a contribution towards environment and climate change. But we do need to explore some cost sharing with the food generators. This food is not always easy or inexpensive to pick up and get back out to our communities. And we're working hard at looking at models for how to improve our own efficiency and our partners' efficiencies, and how to best collaborate with our city, county, and state governments. I mentioned that we already do a lot of food rescue. We are going to, and we ended last year with about 15 million pounds of food rescue coming only from grocery stores and wholesalers like Amazon Fresh, UNFI. And we do this both directly in some cases, and also in other cases, we are enabling our partners and training them, helping them maintain those relationships and doing the reporting. Overall, we provide, as Leslie said, over typically 50% of what we provide is fresh produce. Most of that produce is also technically rescued because it's a farm product that might otherwise go to waste, and we're able to get it simply for kind of shipping and packing fees. So if you look at our overall food mix, about 55% of it is some form of food rescue. What we need at the state level here is that CalRecycle, who is kind of managing the implementation of SB 1383, needs to continue to invest in infrastructure, trucks and storage for us and our partners in order to make sure that we can serve this role, which is going to be very complicated. And then we need real partnership on working with our cities and counties and on understanding what sort of cost recovery models might work for us. And I'm lucky to have here today one of our close partners, Jack Johnson, who's the Senior Sustainability Specialist in San Mateo County. And San Mateo County has been ahead of the curve in looking at this SB 1383 implementation. We did some fairly major pilots together last year. And Jack, if you have a minute or two to talk about how you're viewing this, we'd really appreciate your perspective.
Well, I'm happy to. I first addressed this group, I think it was at Oracle 3 years ago, and we have really grown in our understanding and in our relationship with Second Harvest since that time. And it is, I am grateful daily for the relationship that we have been able to grow with Second Harvest and some of the clients of Second Harvest. Our pilot project was very successful, and we have since expanded that program and added other partners in San Mateo County, such as core service agencies and other folks who were already in the business of edible food recovery. And we're providing funding for vehicles and staff, both admin and on the, well, in the truck, I should say, rather than on the street. To fund expansion of those efforts, and we will continue to do that over the course of 1383. I have only one amendment that I will make to what Tracy said, and that is that it isn't that supermarkets and grocery stores will find it more desirable to provide more food. They will be required to provide more food. In January of this year, when 1383 actually takes effect, they will no longer be able to waste otherwise edible food. They will have to have a contract with either a food bank or a food pantry or some other food recovery service to actually take that food on the terms of the food bank or the food pantry for distribution to people so that they can eat that food, which is perfectly healthy and perfectly edible. It will meet all of the requirements of the food bank for food safety and food handling, as well as the county's requirements. We estimate that there could be as much as 33 million pounds of food a year in San Mateo County. We are testing out that hypothesis, but regardless of whether it's 33 million or more or less, there's a lot of food that will be available to supplement what the food bank is already doing. I do think this is an important supplement for your clients, and I hope that you will work with your county, either San Mateo or Santa Clara, to further this program. The reason it's so important is because A, people are hungry, but also when we throw organics, also known as food, landfills, it generates methane, which is a huge contributor, which is a greenhouse gas and a huge contributor, much more so than carbon dioxide, which is what we generally always think about when we think about greenhouse gas emissions. But it's many multiples of 10 times worse than carbon dioxide. So we have to stop that. We know that our state's on fire. We know that our wasteful habits contribute to climate change, and 1383 gives us legislation that has real teeth to both feed people, but also address some elements of climate change. I think that that's all that I need to say.
Well, thank you.
But you will hear much more about 1383 in coming months, I think mainly through the food bank, perhaps through your county government. I know you will from my county government, and I will put my email in the chat so that anybody who's interested in 1383 in general, what it does in addition to edible food recovery, or the program that we have, or would be interested in being a partner in San Mateo County with the Office of Sustainability, you can just contact me and we'll handle it that way. Thank you all so much for what you do and for allowing me to bore you to tears.
Thank you, Jack. We really appreciate it. And one of the things that has been wonderful about having Jack take a lead on this is really seeing how it can work on a cross-county basis. And San Mateo County is organized in a way that Jack can be kind of the central responsibility for this law for all of the cities. And one of the challenges we may face in Santa Clara County is that it's a much more city by city solution. So we're going to be working with everyone to figure out how we can band together as much as possible, because it will be very, very hard for food recovery organizations to work with 15 separate cities rather than a single county. So we'll be talking to you more about that. And we are actually running ahead. We have two remaining items, an emergency school meals discussion that Zia will be leading, and if you choose, our brand new, hot off the presses, 2.5-minute tour of the food bank. Usually we would invite you into the warehouse. This will be less cold. And it will be very quick. So those are the two things we have ahead. They're not going to take that much time. So I want to pause here, and I've been told I should pause a little longer and see if people have questions that they would like to ask. And I don't think I've seen anything in the chat, but if someone would, if you have a burning question, go ahead and unmute yourself and we'll give it our best shot. And this is where I pause for the uncomfortable silence while people figure out how to unmute themselves. Or perhaps there are no questions. What do you think, Zia? Is that enough uncomfortable silence? Should we move on?
I think everyone's ready for the weekend.
And we're sorry we're not providing you with pastries. So at least that's what we usually do. All right, Zia, take it away.
All right. It is my pleasure to introduce Deborah Austin from Mountain View Wisman School District and June Richardson from Ravenswood City School District to talk about their experience during the pandemic with food service, school nutrition and food service. These two women are just all-stars in the field of school nutrition. They are both recipients of our highly competitive Big Apple Award in the summer, which we give out to one participant every summer for increasing meal access to children in our counties. So without further ado, June, will you please unmute yourself and introduce yourself briefly and describe your school district?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm June Richardson. I am the Sodexo consultant at Ravenswood City School District, and I oversee the Child Nutrition Education Department. We are a K-8 school district, and we have 3 elementary schools and 1 middle school. We are also leasing out another school site to Kip Valiant Charter School, where we also provide meal services for them. Our district enrollment for 2020-2021 is 1,715. And since we are providing meals for Kip Valiant, their enrollment is 620. So I guess the total, I think I wrote it down as like 2,335 is our total that we're providing meals to. And our school district, which also includes Kip Valiant, is currently on our 2nd year of district-wide community eligible provision.
Thank you, June. Debbie, will you please unmute yourself and introduce yourself and your school district?
Hi, I'm Debbie Austin, Director of Child Nutrition for Mountain View Wisman School District. It's a K-8 district. We have 2 middle schools, 9 K-5 schools. My total enrollment is 4,784, of which 30% are free and reduced status. Due to the pandemic, though, the district has lost over 400 students. We have enrolled 1 school under Provision 2 for the upcoming year, and I have my fingers crossed that I don't have to go back and redo all that work due to the pandemic.
Debbie, could you please describe why have you lost 400 students with the pandemic, due to the pandemic?
We've lost 400 students due to homelessness, also not being able to have students in class. The cost of Silicon Valley is prohibitively high, and when people are not employed, they can't afford to pay the rent. Along with the cost of food and the cost of rent, they just couldn't afford to live here, so they left the district. Most of them actually left the state.
Thank you, Debbie. June, how have you been providing meals at Ravenswood City since during the pandemic? What's changed? Sorry, June, you're on mute.
I don't even realize I muted myself. A lot has changed since we started last year, March. I can't believe I'm saying last year, that we're almost going through a year, where we, had really no transition time, and we had to start. We were just giving out individually wrapped individual bags for breakfast, lunch, and kids and families were coming to pick up. And then we went through twice a week meals, and now we are currently running once a week meals. And our day is Wednesday is our once a week meal distribution schedule. And we've also played around with our times where we're distributing. So we had a designated time in the beginning from like 10 to 1, but now we're at 8 to 2. So we have a wider window for families to come and pick up their meals. We are on the Seamless Summer Food Program currently, which allows anyone under the age of 18 years or younger to be eligible to receive a meal from us. We are providing 7-day meal kits. We're taking advantage of all the waivers and flexibilities that CDE is providing us. So we cover holidays and weekends. So we are doing the 7-day meal kits. They're usually they're bulk meals. So for instance, this week our families received a meal kit where they can have meatballs and pasta. That covers the 7 days. And next week they're going to get like a sandwich meal, like all the ingredients to make sandwiches will be provided. We've had chicken tenders, we had fajita chicken and tortilla meals. So that's how we're doing. But we also, thank you to Second Harvest, they have never skipped a beat and are available at our middle school to provide supplemental grocery for our families as well from Tuesday to Saturday. So that has been really helpful as well.
Thank you, June. Debbie, how about Mountain View Wistman? How have you been providing meals during the pandemic?
We have been providing grab-and-go meals during the summer, using the summer seamless pattern of meals in conjunction with the additional USDA waivers. The waivers have allowed us to feed any child that comes to us regardless of their status. The waivers have also allowed us to serve at every school site, which is not possible under regular summer seamless. So our children have better access and they're able to walk to their actual school site. I have every single school site open. We also feed to 2 homeless camps, and we also feed an additional district that doesn't have a kitchen. Since the pandemic, we served over 650,000 meals. Mountain View Wistman School District Department, we're the first defense in child hunger. Our purpose is to ensure that every child has access to meals, clean water, and moral support. We serve breakfast, lunch, and snack 4 days a week at every single school site, and on Friday, we feed Saturday and Sunday meals. We offer fresh baked muffins, scratch-made rigatoni and meat sauce, cheese enchiladas, orange chicken, and pasta. And again, thank you for Second Harvest Food Bank. We have community food boxes, which are phenomenal at 2 different school sites every single week. Thank you.
I did not prep the participants to say these things about Second Harvest, but we are grateful. Debbie, I'm going to go off script a little bit here. You saw the graph where there was tremendous participation in the summer, most likely due to the flexibilities.
Yes.
How are you impacted? I mean, did you serve more meals in the summer? Did you lose participation during the school year? What did it look like for Mountain View Wistman?
Actually, summer meals were very, very good. And I saw a lot of faces that I'd never seen before, but due to the pandemic, we started asking questions because we did see faces that we had never seen before. And we found out that a lot of families, both parents had lost their job. So we had people coming to us which had never eaten a school meal before, which had never participated in summer meals before. So summer was very, very good due to the different waivers. When school started, however, that crashed. That crashed because we didn't have the waivers. It was a regular national school lunch program. So we had to use a point of sale system. We had to account for every single meal. It made the lines extremely long and people just refused to show up.
Thank you, Debbie. June, what's been your biggest challenge feeding kids in your district?
So our biggest challenge, of course, is the obvious where we're having to deal with the numerous changes that come to us from CDE, whether it be the flexibility of the waivers, the non-flexibility of the waivers, keeping up with all the nationwide waivers. That has been really challenging for us. But also on the operations level, I think coming up with menu items that can accommodate the needs of our community and our families and yet not getting too repetitive where we lose participation. That's been challenging. I feel like our district has been really good about communication. We use everything imaginable, but yet there's still a pocket of people that are still not getting the information, and we just can't figure that out. We just happen to stumble upon, like, there's a Tongan community that hasn't. I mean, we've reached out to churches and everything, but we still get a little bit of pocket of people not getting the communication. The other challenge has been dealing with how do we provide quality meals and a balance between perishable and non-perishable, especially when we're doing bulk meals, because we're realizing that a lot of our families don't have the right storage capacity in their homes, especially if you're a home full with two or more kids and each of them get a meal kit. How do we store all of that? So that, and people who don't have the capacity to cook the meals, because our meals are bulk meals, frozen, the people who are homeless, how do we ensure that they are able to? All of those little logistics and details are challenging, but we take it one day at a time.
Thank you, June. Debbie, how about you? What's been your biggest challenge?
I think my biggest challenge has been vendors going bankrupt. When the pandemic first started, it wasn't that bad, but by the time it got to be summer, we lost a bread vendor, we lost a milk vendor, our vendors just weren't operating anymore, so we had to scramble and try and find emergency food, and trying to meet our menu, trying to make everything match what the National School Lunch says that we need to serve. So thanks to the waivers, they made it doable. They actually made it doable. And to mimic what June said, we had exactly the same issues and the same problems. Getting food to the homeless was a problem. Getting food to the Army base was a problem. We found that most Army families do not make enough money to feed their children in Silicon Valley. And so we found there was a huge hunger pocket at the Moffett Air Force Base. And so now we have help with transportation. We have bus drivers that literally take meals down to them every single day. We tried the meal kits. The meal kits didn't go over very well in our district. The parents told us they prefer the hot meal because they could grab the hot meal, go home and immediately eat, and then the kids can be back in class. So that's why we do a 5-day-a-week meal distribution. It works better for our district.
Thank you, Debbie. June, I was wondering, a lot of times we hear policymakers hesitant to introduce new policy or amend policy that would affect schools' nutrition departments. We hear a lot that you don't have time or you don't have maybe the interest right now to innovate. How would you respond to that?
I would say that actually the pandemic has forced a lot of us operators to be innovative because we had no choice. We had to. And I think a lot of us have the same vision. How do we fight food insecurity, and how do we provide that peace of mind for our families and communities to be able to have equitable access to food? So I think when policymakers do make policy, I don't think that reason is valid, at least for me personally in our district. We always embrace challenge. And I think when we're challenged in that sort of way, we tend to be more innovative in our approach. And the end result is it can only benefit our students, our district, and our community.
Thank you, June. Debbie, do you have anything to add?
No, I feel that she said it all. We have to be innovative. Things were thrown at us at the beginning. They changed almost every single day with the health department because nobody knew exactly what was going on. So just everything just changed. So we had to really be geniuses when it came to food service, because nobody in the country had ever done this before. So everybody had to be innovative. Everything was different every other day. After about 30 days, we kind of figured out what worked for our district, and the health department still kept throwing different stuff at us every day. So it's just whatever they throw at us, we just see to it that the kids get food by any means necessary.
Thank you. Thank you both. Final question, June. Ravenswood City School District was the first school district to enter into universal meals programs as a whole district community eligibility provision. So what does it mean for your students to access free school meals at school? And how will that impact your district after the pandemic ends?
Yeah, so our district has the luxury of having a comparison of how it was when we were free and reduced, and then now we are district-wide. So this is our second year, as I've mentioned earlier. I think one of the biggest for our district was the elimination of the meal application process. We were struggling, especially during the past 4 years, with people either pulling out of the food program or struggling with getting meal applications because they were afraid about the information that was going out. And so there was a lot of fear behind that. With CEP, we no longer have the meal applications. So I feel like that there's less fear with the families and there's more participation with our students in terms of having access to the school lunches. The other thing is the meal application process. I feel like the income guidelines with the meal application, it never did take into consideration the cost of living in different areas. And so like, even though a lot of people would fall, like our families would fall under reduced or paid, but in reality, with the cost of living here in the Bay Area, they still would be under free, in my opinion. And so we had a lot of debt with people unable to pay their meals, whether they were reduced or paid. So that eliminates the whole issue. The other biggest thing that I've noticed was there's always been a stigma with school lunches and people getting school lunches. And I feel like the universal meal provides an option for everybody where it destigmatizes the school lunch perception. And that's huge. That's huge for the students. I feel like there's less opportunity for judgment, right? So that alone, that one single thing alone in the school environment makes a huge impact on all aspects of a student's experience at a school. So I feel like the free school meals, they create an environment and culture of inclusiveness and equity when everyone has access to free meals, and they don't have to worry about being excluded due to household incomes. It embraces and respects diversity in our community, definitely in our community, without question and judgment. It eliminates the judgment piece of families being able to provide food to their children. It also, that impacts the family, the head of the household, and their perception of how am I providing for my kid. And it's also a healthy option. The other thing I wanted to mention too, that all the labor, the administrative labor that went into like with the meal process and all of that, I feel like with CEP, we're able to use that energy into being more innovative and being able to provide more quality service and food to our district. So you're just kind of transferring that labor into something more productive, that's more beneficial, has better impact to our students and our district.
Thank you, June. Debbie, Mountain View Wisman will be, or has enrolled your first school in Provision 2, which will provide free breakfast, correct, to all students at your school. How do you think this is going to impact Mountain View Wisman? What would it mean for all of your students to have access to universal free school meals?
Well, universal free school meals in my district will help with the bullying aspect of kids, because everybody will be on an equal footing. So nobody will exactly say, oh, you don't have any money, your parents don't have any money. It's a huge issue in our district because you have those that have a lot and you have others that have nothing. So we've noticed that there is bullying going on even at the smaller grades and the younger grades. So that will totally eliminate it. Also, universal meals will help curb food insecurity for our students. A lot of our students at that one site, we are their only meal for the day. We find that the parents, even though they need the food, they don't sign the application because they're afraid they will be denied citizenship in this country because they're using a federal program, which they're not supposed to. However, they don't understand, and we tried to tell them in many languages that our application is not given to anybody. It stays in-house, it is private. However, they still don't believe us. So using the universal meal, that totally eliminates the application, that totally eliminates the fear. I think it's the best thing I've seen in 52 years of being in food service. I've been around an awfully long time. I actually grew up in Oakland, and I got fed with tickets because I had a single mom and who had 3 children. So I grew up using this program. And I'm here to tell you, universal meals in 52 years is the best thing I've ever seen.
On that note, I will say thank you, June. Thank you, Debbie. You are our champions. We appreciate you so much, and thank you for your time today. Quickly,
and we appreciate you.
Thank you. Quickly, I'll give a shout out to a couple other school districts on this call. I saw Morgan Hill Unified, Eastside Union, and Santa Clara Unified. Thank you all. You are champions. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tracy. Thank you, June. Thank you, Debbie.
Yeah, thank you, June and Debbie. You're so inspiring. What you've had to do in general and then in the past year is just unbelievable. So thank you, and thank you for proving out these policies on the ground and the difference that they can make. So we've come to the end of our formal presentation. I would like to take the opportunity to see if there are any questions before we go into our amazing tour that you will be the first to see. This will be the first official one, so don't miss that. So if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or to go ahead and unmute yourself. We'd love to hear from you. And I'll just keep thanking people until someone unmutes themselves that I see. So we are really appreciative that you're all here. I think that this agenda shows how all of you have something you can do to help at the policy level, whether it's at the school district, the city, the county, Office of Ed, state or federal level. And we've been so grateful in this last year to partner even more closely with so many of you to make a lot of these things really happen. So we're very grateful for that. Any questions? All right, we've talked you to death. Did I give enough time? All right, here comes the tour. If you have to drop off as of now, we'll send you also a link to the tour, and I'll be available for questions again after the tour. So let's see if this works. If it does, we'll have not had any major technical difficulties. So let's see if it goes.
Can you share your sound, Tracy?
Okay. It had to be something. Hold on. Let's see. Share computer sound. I thought I had. Let's try this again.
Food banks in the nation. Founded in 1974, Second Harvest of Silicon Valley is one of the largest food banks in the nation and a local leader in addressing hunger in Santa Clara and San Mateo counties. The pandemic has caused widespread job loss, and now we are providing food to an average of 500,000 people each month, double from what we were serving pre-pandemic. In fact, many are receiving food assistance for the very first time. Today, we're at our Cypress Center in San Jose. It is now one of our 4 facilities after we opened the Brennan warehouse last year to meet the increased level of need. We have quickly overhauled our operations to keep our clients, volunteers, and staff safe. At the same time, we've had to double the amount of food that travels through our warehouses. We are distributing an average of more than 11 million pounds of food every month. half of which is produce. To make sure our clients can enjoy fresh fruits and vegetables, we've added 10,000 square feet of refrigeration here at our Cypress Center. Meanwhile, our freezer stores proteins like chicken and turkey, which often are the center of a very special meal. If you're wondering where this food comes from, we source donated food and then supplement with purchased items. Right now, about 3/4 of our food is donated and the rest is purchased. Because of COVID, we needed to find a way to distribute this food safely and quickly. Here at our Cypress facility, our volunteers now sort and pack food into sealed boxes. We also expanded our truck fleet from 21 to 35 since the start of the pandemic, so that our drivers can deliver more of these boxes throughout our 2 counties, from Daly City to Gilroy. Before the pandemic, we only had 3 drive-through sites. Now, we drop off food at more than 130 drive-throughs. While COVID-19's long-term impact of lost wages and depleted savings will be felt for years, together, we can ensure that everyone in our community has access to a healthy meal. Thank you for joining us on our visit today to the Cypress Center.
All right, important safety tip that I've learned. If you're running a video and you're hosting it, you can't click anything. Don't mute yourself. Don't try and look at what's going on in the chat. It will stop the video. So just so you can all learn from my experience. Anyway, thank you all for being here. Are there any questions?
Tracy, I just wanted to say a thank you to you and Zia for pulling today together, and thank you to Supervisor Ellenberg and Assemblymember Berman for speaking, and thank you to Ed and Debbie and June for just sharing your personal stories and experiences, which just really I found so moving and inspiring, truly. And like we said at the start of this, we are just so grateful to be part of this community, to have such incredible partners in this work, true partnerships with our counties and our elected officials. And just many thanks to all of you for making this work possible.
Thank you so much, Leslie. So unless anyone has any additional questions, this is the end of our event, and we will be sending you our policy agenda in the next couple of weeks. And we look forward to hearing from you on anything you think that we could work on together to further some of these aims. So thank you again.